Okay. Friends, first of all, good evening to all of you. And my hearty congratulations to the association and other bodies who have joined in this today's session, because it is not only my endeavor, that is not important really, but the keen readiness with which the association, the committee members agreed to really my suggestion for having a question and answer session, considering that almost more than 200 questions were actually put by the participants relating to my two sessions. And I suggested an idea and they readily agreed. And immediately in no time, they organized the session and more, which was totally unplanned. And that also making it free for all, and thereby, making this assimilation of the understanding and knowledge about this subject at the grassroots level through the question answer session, making it accessible to all. So my hearty congratulations to all of you, really, and the participants who have been, showing such an involved enthusiasm. When I saw the question numbers, which are almost nearing to 230, relating to the topics, show cause notice and appeal, there are only two ways one can infer this. When you have a barrage of questions of more than 200, there are only two ways of looking at it. The one way is that I was totally lost to the participants, and I was confusing, and I was also really controversial in my views, if not absurdly absurd. That is one way of looking at it. Then only there will be so many questions. Another way of looking at it, the participants were so much involved in the subject, and this shows their enthusiasm and eagerness to really understand this extremely complicated piece of law, the legislation. So my hearty congratulations to all the participants, and I take it as my honor to really, for having really given me this opportunity to understand these finer aspects of this law in much detail through their questions put up before them. This particular PowerPoint presentation, at least I'm sure those who have already joined the mega conference definitely will be shared with them. As far as the other participants who have only joined for the today's session, I'm sure association will make some arrangement, but if there is any difficulty, my contact numbers will be there. Kindly simply put me the WhatsApp message, and I will share this PPT with you also. So just we have a very less time. Out of this about 230 questions and odd, I have selected about 190 questions and odd. These questions have been then grouped by me in different topics like pre-consultation, show cause notice, order, appeal, etc. And as a last minute, I also decided to put my response in the PowerPoint presentation only. Therefore, even if I'm unable to cover all the questions today, which would not be probably possible, and I will not rush through also, this presentation when will be with you, my answers are already there in this presentation. So I am sure it will found to be a useful reference and maybe bit informative to you also. So let us start. I will not take any other questions today. All other questions we will have to wait. All the live questions which are being put up today, because we will not have time. I will have to give the priority to the participants who have raised the questions, and they are very detailed questions. I am sure it itself will be a treasure of understanding for the subject. Thank you. So with these words, I will start. First slide, please. The first grouping is under pre-notice consultation. The question is relating to that whether DRC 01A, after its amendment recently from 1/1/2021, it says instead of shall communicate, it now says, can you have this, on the screen? Because I think I'm finding my speaker's response is getting cut. Can you arrange the screen, please? I have the copy in my hands, but participants should be able to see this.
So it is there on the screen.
Acha, it is there in their screen. No? I have my copy, no problem. Okay.
Your presentation is there, sir.
Yes, okay, my presentation is there. But anyway, my speaker's response is not, I'm able to see that on the screen, but it's fine. I have the copy, don't worry. So the whether it is discretionary after the shall word has been, replaced by may. The answer is yes. The powers are now discretionary. The proper officer may issue DRC 01A or he may choose not to issue. Can we then challenge this discretionary power? It all depends upon the facts of the case and how really seriously you feel aggrieved by the non-issue of the DRC 01A. The law, the provision does not provide for that his discretionary power should be exercised with reasons. However, it is an unwritten law. When the discretionary powers are exercised, there have to be the reasons. And if the reasons are not, obviously they will not communicate in the absence of any provision. And if the reasons later on, if they are asked for, and these reasons are found to be not really specifically, the proper reasons, one can think of challenging. But as I said, whether this particular DRC 01A is really a ban or boon for the taxpayer, that remains to be seen. The next question is says it does not say may communicate. I will only say, Mr. Kutnikar, kindly just read before 1/1/2021 what is the text of the 142(1)A, and then please kindly go through the amendment of November whereby the word said. Otherwise, even if the shall word is also not there, it will be grammatically incorrect and the entire provision will read very absurdly. So I think we may have to read the provision in its entirety properly. Can statement in form DRC 1A be challenged? As I said, as far as the challenge to the statement itself is concerned, I would find it will be really too premature because it is the only communication of the proposed liability. And because it is a question of proposed liability, you feel that if at all you want to participate in the question, in the DRC 1A pre-notice consultation, and after consultation, if these are rejected and the show cause notice come with the rejection of your submissions made at the DRC 01A level, you may just think of challenging it in the actual show cause notice to challenge it under before the High Court. But this should be very, very carefully calibrated. These options should not be exercised at the show cause notice. And definitely, I would really not advise DRC 01A challenge before the High Court. Next. Can we take the grounds taken in the, yes, this is the question from Mr. Mittal. And he says that where is the law that I cannot take the ground? Just to clear the confusion, I never said that the pre-notice consultation stage, whatever grounds are taken in response to the DRC 01A cannot be taken in the reply to the show cause notice if those grounds are rejected. The point I'm trying to make repeatedly is this: the very grounds which have been rejected at the DRC 01A consultation stage, it does not serve what will be left with the taxpayer to argue further if he has put all his cards on the table at the pre-notice consultation stage. Nothing would remain for him, and the grounds which he have taken, which he could have otherwise taken in the show cause notice, have already been rejected. So entire exercise becomes an empty formality. But it does not mean that you can again not repeat the ground in the reply to the show cause notice. And that is exactly the reason why I am a bit allergic to participate in the consultation process. And one had to take this call on the case-to-case basis. Can we choose to reply DRC 01 by saying liability not acceptable without giving any reason? Yes, one can simply say that acknowledging the DRC 01A receipt, one can definitely say that please, we have gone through the contents of the DRC 01A and the grounds taken by the charges and the proposed liability. We respectfully do not agree with the same, and we therefore request you to follow the due process of law. That's all. Due process of law means issue of the show cause notice. Is department required to pre-consult with SSC before issue of the show cause notice? We have already seen that. The amended provision, however, makes it discretionary and not compulsory. Next. This is now under show cause notice. The first group was pre-notice consultation, now show cause notice. How to relate or points to take care for the cases to be quoted in support of. The one point, these questions have come up 3-4 times in a different way. Now, the only point that I'm making is, on the same point, if there are similar type of judgments, which are ultimately leading to the same judgment conclusion, there is no need to cite a catena of decision 10, 20, 30, if they are all coming to the same conclusion. One has to be slightly careful in citing so many judgments. And secondly, whenever you are making the judgment, if you are on a time bar, the time bar aspect of the judgment should be on the time bar. There could be a case where both merits and time bar could be covered by one single judgment, and you are citing that judgment. That can be cited also. But before citing any judgment, it will always be advisable to see the latest status or the current status of that case, whether it has been appealed against or not, as far as possible through the published taxation website or ELT or GSTL, etc. Whatever. I mean, you can put your best effort to find out whether appeal is made. But if you are unable to find out, that should not stop you from really citing that judgment in your favor. What is the status of notice issued without din? In my opinion, it is at worst irregular, but it cannot become invalid. However, there is a catch here, and one can think over this. The board circular prescribing the mention of the DIN mandatory on all the communications, including SOCOS notice or DRC 01A or whatever, it says that without DIN, it will be treated as an invalid communication. Now, this is a board circular which otherwise is in the binding on the department. The similar case we have seen in the context of pre-notice consultation, the pre-service tax circular of the board requiring the pre-notice consultation in certain cases compulsory, though there was no statutory provision unlike 142(1)A of the CGST Act. And these circular instructions were held to be binding by the Delhi High Court in Amadeus India case, in the Back Office IT Solutions Private Limited case by Delhi High Court only, by Tube Investment India case by the Madras High Court also. In Amadeus India, they relied upon the Supreme Court judgment in India Cements case, saying that the instruction of the department board are binding. Taking cue from this, and there are umpteen number of judgments on this case, one can say that once the board said without din it is invalid, one can challenge it. But I personally feel that this may become a contentious issue, but no harm in taking it. Can the reply to the notice be said with us? There is no standard reply. This particular type of query has come from 3-4 participants. As such, I personally wouldn't mind, sharing the reply. Maybe I may cut out the essential details. I mean, client name or whatever. The point is this: the one thing which we may have to be very clear as a professional, we have to get rid of two mentality. One is, as what Bhagavad Gita says, conditioned mind. A conditioned mind is the most dangerous enemy of at least the professional, if not all the human beings. When we are conditioned, then we stop thinking also. We stop thinking, we stop deliberating, we stop studying. And secondly, is we should never get into the copy-paste culture. Even when you are fighting two cases where the limitation ground could be same, suppose. In that case also, when you are doing the copy-paste, one should really excel diligent enough, and simpliciter copy-paste should never be done. Friends, indirect tax, as I've been saying, it is a very different piece of litigation. Here the litigations are markedly different from the income tax and such other things. So therefore, every case you will have to fight on its own merit on a different grounds. Now in that case, there cannot be one size fit all solution, or there cannot be a ready-made solution for anybody. This is not a 2 minutes Maggi noodles. So one should be very careful about going into the stereotype mechanical type of reply, doing the copy paste. One should be very careful. Department can afford to issue thousands of so-called notice on the basis of ITR and TDS, but our reply to each and every case of the similar type of so-called notice to 10 different clients can only be different depending upon the facts involved in each case. Can Commissioner Appeal take fresh contention and pass adverse appeal? No. I have said that once the SOCOS notice is issued by the department, it binds as such department right up to the SOCOS notice. A SOCOS notice is not an old wine which gets better and better day by the day. And therefore, at the successive adjudication stage, neither the adjudication order, nor the appellate commissioner order, nor the tribunal order can go beyond the scope of the SOCOS notice, has been repeatedly said by High Court and Supreme Court. In my earlier presentation, you kindly refer to Hindustan Polymers case. There is a Reckitt and Coleman case also, and there are some 5 or 6 judgments which I have cited that the department cannot be, a new case cannot be allowed to be made out to the department at the successive appeal stage. Next. Who can issue show cause notice? Whether a proper officer or adjudicating authority. A show cause notice, there is nothing like adjudicating authorities issuing the show cause notice. An officer becomes adjudicating authority when he is adjudicating the matter. So when a deputy commissioner suppose issues a show cause notice, and when he adjudicates the matter, when he is issuing the show cause notice, he is issuing it as a proper officer in terms of section 2 subsection 91, read with the circular dated 5/11/2017 of the board, designating him as a proper officer, superintendent and above. But when he is adjudicating that matter, he becomes the adjudicating authority. In the peculiar scheme of the excise, customs and service tax, almost in majority of the cases, the proper officer issuing the show cause notice and the officer adjudicating the matter will be one and the same, except in case of superintendent. Generally, superintendent will not be adjudicating the matter. Some monetary powers in the erstwhile regime were given to him, small cases, but otherwise superintendent does not adjudicate. But otherwise, the adjudicating authority and proper officer could be the same also. So one should not get shocked by that. He is actually the complainant. He is also the prosecution, and he is also the judge. We have to live with this scheme of the things. Another question is multiple registration. Can an officer having a jurisdiction? This will actually depend upon the facts of the case. Suppose a person has a registration in Maharashtra, and he is also having a registration in Gujarat as well as in the Karnataka, state of Karnataka. He is making ultimately consolidated one balance sheet only. Based on that balance sheet, if any demand is to be raised by the superintendent in Maharashtra, can he raise for the demand also in respect of the Karnataka as well as Gujarat, who are separately registered? In my opinion, he cannot do so. His demand can only remain confined to only the Maharashtra clearances, though it is based on the overall balance sheet. This is something, it's a slightly, it could be a contentious issue. But yes, in the particular scheme of the GST, under service tax, this could not have posed much difficulty. There is another rider to this. DGGI is said to be having the all India jurisdiction. So when the DGGI issues the show cause notice, say either to the Maharashtra unit or to the Karnataka unit or to the Gujarat unit, they may include the total clearances for whatever reason and they raise the one consolidated demand on that unit. That is what actually DGGI. Now, whether the DGGI has got a all India jurisdiction or not, can they issue a show cause notice? This is another contentious issue. Coming to, can one fight the whole matter only on the basis of the jurisdictional issue? I would not really advise that. One should not really harp upon and rely upon only one single ground. Jurisdiction can be a very tricky matter, and one has to be absolutely sure. What can be done is, in the reply to the show cause notice, ground of jurisdiction can be taken as a preliminary objection also, or as a preliminary ground, and without prejudice to that ground, the rest of the grounds on merits and limitation and other grounds can be taken. Generally, I follow the same thing. If the ground of jurisdiction is not taken at the first adjudication level, it can also be taken at the successive appeal level by the taxpayer on behalf of because jurisdiction goes to the very roots of the matter. One cannot waste the authority with the jurisdiction which it doesn't have in the law by consent. I cannot consent to the jurisdiction that you have no jurisdiction, don't mind, I have no problem if you adjudicate the matter. No, jurisdiction cannot be invested with the consent. And therefore, one can take the jurisdiction ground even at the successive stage, even though it is not taken at the first stage. But one should not simply rely upon only the jurisdiction. Next. In reply to show cause notice, is it appropriate to put all the jurisdictional power? As I said, that one should not really, our duty is basically to sort out the proper judgments in support of the ground which you are. If you are on a merit, one should never confuse that with the limitation judgment. If you are on a limitation ground, please, one should not cite the judgment on the merits in that particular paragraph. So your judgments which we are citing should be confined to the submissions which we are making, depending upon that, number one. Secondly, one should never go by the head notes of the judgment. Head notes can be misleading at the time, unknowingly. Ultimately, all are human beings, and therefore one may not have picked up the essence of the judgment in the head notes correctly. Whichever judgment one cites, one should always read through that judgment very, very carefully, because a minor change in the facts can also make that judgment inapplicable. And once you have done your homework and you have seen that this judgment, there is not appeal against as per your research, then you should cite it and leave it to the department. One should not really worry about. And if he proves that it has been appealed against, a mere appeal against the judgment will not make it inapplicable unless there is a stay against that judgment by the higher authority. And even then, it could be a debatable issue. But mere filing of the appeal will not make it inapplicable and irrelevant. Please bear it in mind. Can the issue of show cause notice only under 73 and 74? But after seizure, is there any other provision? Yes, there is a section 129, subsection 3. Kindly see, after seizure, the show cause notice has to be issued under that for the detention and seizure of the goods. Is audit memo a show cause notice? I have clarified this in my show cause notice talk, that audit memo or final audit report with the objections and demand, or draft audit report with the objection or demand, or any other communication which actually detailing the demand under different heading and on different grounds is merely a communication to which it can be responded. It is not a show cause notice in terms of section 173 or 74 whatsoever. Please see tribunal and seatbelt refrigeration case. What can be done if received notice under section 16.4? One must contest it. Friends, I am of the very clear opinion that the time limit for taking the ITC under section 16.4, as the provisions, not only 16.4, all the connected provisions which are relevant on this issue, on a harmonious and conjoint reading of all the relevant provisions, I am firmly of the view that the section 16.4 time limit for taking the ITC does not operate today at all. It is not relevant and applicable at all. It is not implementable at all. And therefore, any taxpayer who might have really missed out the taking of the credit, say even in 1718, or even in 1819, or even in 1920, they can take the credit even now if it is a genuinely missed out. I'm not talking about fake invoices or otherwise. I'm not concerned with that. But otherwise, a person can take the credit even now, and it is a legal issue, contentious issue, but at least I am personally very firm in my view today. Next. Is show cause notice is appealable? No. Show cause notice is never appealable. Show cause notice itself shows that it is not an order. One has to, you can make it, you can challenge it before High Court, that's a different matter. Can show cause notice be issued by DGGI authorities? As I said, DGGI powers, on the somewhat similar line on the case of DRI, Canon India, Supreme Court Syed Ali case, then there are a host of the judgments on this. I'm not going into the details, but DGGI, already there is a challenge to the DGGI authorities and DGCEI, which was erstwhile authority, which has now become DGGI. The challenge to their powers to issue show cause notice and their all India jurisdiction as is perceived is already under challenge. If reply to show cause notice is found satisfactory, can proceedings as initiated can be dropped by the assessing officer? I can only say that if he is satisfied, then he can drop the proceedings. Whether he would drop the proceedings or not, that is anybody's guess. If in show cause notice, wrong service tax number of the SSC is mentioned, what remedy is available to the SSC? This is merely an irregularity. In my opinion, this will not render the show cause notice void and bad in law. So therefore, it is not fatal to the proceedings. One can simply point out that the registration number has been wrongly mentioned. If all other details point out that this notice has been issued to the particular taxpayer for whom it is meant, only the registration number is wrongly mentioned. Next. This particular query, gist of the query is that if the demand is actually confirmed, but the rate of tax which has been applied is wrong, then what should one do? In other words, either it could be the issue of the classification, or it could be the issue of the exemption notification, or there may be the wrong rate for any other reason is applied. If two things are there, if the show-cause notice itself has made a reference to a wrong rate of tax for any reason by wrong classification or otherwise, this should be challenged in the reply to the show-cause notice there and then. Otherwise, if the computation is whatever amount is determined has become inflated and wrong on account of the wrong tax, then it itself is a subject matter of challenge before the appellate authority on the ground that the wrong tax rate has been applied. Whether any documents can be demanded by the departmental officer, even if he demands any documents after show-cause notice, as I explained in detail, he cannot really issue an amendment, addendum or corrigendum by expanding the scope of the show-cause notice substantially or by inserting some new ground. He can do so through corrigendum or amendment only some technical errors or minor errors. So even if he demands the documents, he cannot really completely make out a new case out of that. Next. Next, please. Can just non-registration and consequent non-filing of the return can be construed as a suppression of facts. This will again depend upon the facts of each case. There cannot be a common yardstick for these type of cases. Whether the non-registration and non-filing of return, obviously non-payment of tax also, was due to bona fide belief. Was there any correspondence between the department and the party? Whether this bona fide belief, whether there were any conflicting views in the matter. So ultimately, it will all depend upon, yes, mere non-registration may not be the ground for alleging the willful separation, as has been held by the Supreme Court in Padmini Products and Camphor Drug Liniments, which have been subsequently followed in Cosmic Dye Chemical, Pushpam Pharmaceutical, Continental Foundation Joint Venture, and host of the other cases. But this will again, this is a mixed question of facts and law because this is a question of limitation. Whether recovery under Section 79 can be directly made without issue of show-cause notice for self-assessment tax. Here, actually, one should be slightly careful here because Section 75 subsection 12 speaks about that self-assessed tax has to be paid, and if it is not paid, then the recovery under Section 79 will lie. And recently, by Finance Act 2021, Section 75(12) has been amended and an explanation has been inserted to make this point very clear. Just to clarify again and again that none of the amendments relating to GST, which have been actually incorporated now from 28 March 2021, which amendments have been made by Finance Act 2021, not a single amendment is right now in operation because they are not notified. So they have become part of the act, but none of them is right now operative. Please bear it in mind. Whether it is exports, compulsory exports under LUT, unless otherwise specified, whether it is Section 7 supply definition amendment, whether it is Section 75(12) amendment, whether relating to Section 107, 129, 130 relating to detention related, Section 83 attachment powers, all these amendments have become part of the act, but yet not have become. They are dormant, lying in the act. They will come to life when the central government will notify the date. Now, in Kabir Realty, I'm sorry I forgot to mention the judgment. In Kabir Realty case, Madhya Pradesh High Court, 2019 TIOL 2813, High Court, Madhya Pradesh. 2019 TIOL 2813. In this case, Madhya Pradesh High Court has said that once the self-assessed tax is GSTR1 is filed and the tax has been declared, the liability is determined by the taxpayer, then he cannot insist upon, he has to pay that tax, and therefore non-payment of that Section 79 action will lie. And here, actually, I have some reservations about this proposition, but taking cue from this judgment, probably the explanation has been now inserted under Section 75(12). Can multiple show-cause notice be issued for the same period? There cannot be overlapping demand for the same period on the same ground. But otherwise, there is no limit on the number of show-cause notices which can be issued by the department on different grounds for any reason. Whether it will have a bearing on the time bar, again, it will depend upon the facts of each case. If the penalty is not proper, penal provisions are not invoked in the show-cause notice, can the penalty be imposed through the adjudication order? The answer is no. It is now a settled law that unless a person has been asked to show cause against the penal action cannot be taken against him. No penalty can be imposed against him merely because the law exists. Next. Is there any limit? I already covered this. Can a show cause notice be issued demanding only interest? Yes. The word which are used as tax along with interest, it is only when the tax is demanded. It can be a bad drafting, but the settled law is that show cause notice is necessary for even demanding the interest, and it has also been laid down that the time limit prescribed under the law, currently section 73 and 74, for raising the demand, normal period of limitation and extended period of limitation will also be applicable in case of the demand relating to interest. One can usefully refer to the Punjab and Haryana High Court judgment on this point, and that is in ANS Steel Tube Limited, where the High Court has actually reversed the ruling of the tribunal 218 ELT A160, 2015 218 ELT ANS Steel Tubes Limited. Is there any time limit prescribed for issue of show cause notice in case of search? Whether it is a search or otherwise, all the any show cause notice demanding the tax will have to adhere to the time limit of section 73 or section 74 as the case may be. Next. Whether the calculation from the annual due date is the date on with the no, the law is very clear. Section 73(10) and section 74(10) very clearly says the notice has to be issued at least 3 months or at least 6 months before the due date of furnishing the return. And on those cases where the taxpayers are absolved from filing the annual return under form GSTR 9 below 2 crore, where they have been given an option not to file the return, and if they have opted to not file the return, the notification itself very clearly says that those who have gone for this option, the due date as otherwise declared, it should be deemed to have been filed on the due date. If you refer to the notification by which this waiver for the filing of annual return to the small taxpayers have been granted, that notification in the end very clearly says that for the purposes of this notification, that if a return is not filed, then it is deemed to have been filed on the due date. Next, in the GST era, all show cause notice, I will only say that this is not something new in GST era. We have been witnessing the cases where the allegations of willful suppression and evasion are made in a very, very routine, mechanical and casual and superficial manner. So as far as the department is concerned, what we have normally witnessed is, one would witness this, if they have missed the time limit of normal period of limitation under that, then automatically from their perspective, the case becomes one of the willful suppression. The moment the time limit is missed, then in majority of the cases, though there is no cause for the suppression charges, for them it becomes the evasion case. And we have to deal with that. Next. At the premises, the 2.5 crore has been forced to be recovered. I am really worried, concerned about this port recovery business. The time has really come where everybody should understand, time and again, that there is no a single authority who can make the taxpayer pay any amount without processing following the due course of law. He can demand show cause notice. He can do whatever may be, साम दाम दंड भेद, चारों में से भले कोई भी नीति उसके सामने यूज की जाए, one has to be very firm if one, particularly when one feels that the demand is absolutely unjustifiable. Having been forced to make this payment, the one can actually ask for the show cause notice now or reason order also. If no show cause notice, and if nothing is coming after a couple of reminders, immediately one should file the refund claim. This recovery has been made without authority of law, without show cause notice, and even otherwise also it is made in law because the tax was never payable. This will again depend upon the facts of the case, but this can be done. If a number was suspended, now even after making the payment, the number is not getting restored, and the return. So I only said that this is all technical issue. Just for the smooth operation, make the payment of late fees and penalty even for the period after which you have otherwise complied with the earlier, you have remedied the earlier errors. And for that period, after making the payment, ask for the file the refund claim, saying that at least from this date, the late fee and penalty was not payable. Next. Appellate authority, no. Appellate authority cannot decide the matter on the phrase ground. Whether separate SOCOS notice are issued to be, it is very much no, can only be issued by the jurisdictional authority, not by anybody else. And if SOCOS notice is issued without mention of 73, 74, but under section 130, if it is mentioned, does it become invalid? Again, this will depend upon the facts of the case. If it relates to the action under section 129 read with 130, 130 is a confiscation. Section 130 does not provide for the SOCOS notice. It provides for the personal hearing before any order of confiscation is passed. There is no specific mention of the SOCOS notice. Section 129(3) speaks about the SOCOS notice in case of the seized goods. So if it is confined to that, then one has to see that. But if the demand of tax is in case of 73, 74, then ML is issued under 130. There are judgments, conflicting judgments on this, where the mere citing of the wrong provision of law will not make it invalid. Again, it will depend upon the facts of each case, but there is no harm on taking this ground and challenge it. Can SOCOS notice altered, added once it is issued? No, unless for the minor errors. Next. Can appellate authority raise phrase contents? Whether the adjudicating authority demand further documents after issued? I already covered this. Whether allegation of suppression can be made only because non-payment of tax was disclosed during audit. Again, this will become the facts, depend upon the facts of the each case. Because what audit has actually unearthed, and what in majority of the SOCOS notice, particularly raising the evasion charges against the party. In the SOCOS notice, customary paragraph will be the taxpayer has SSC has resorted to the willful suppression and misdeclaration, and but for the audit, this could never have come to the light of the department, and there is a willful evasion. These are standard paragraph and standard language. Whether there is really a willful suppression and audit contention is correct, because audit could only bring out this on records, or whether it is a mechanical charge will depend upon the facts of the case. Yes, there are decisions that in normal cases, a SOCOS notice merely on the basis of the audit objection can also be challenged as an invalid. Kindly see tribunal very old decision in the Swastik Laminates case. But then these are all facts to facts, it will differ. Can we file writ petition against the SOCOS notice? This depends upon the allegation in the notice. As I said, if it raises some constitutional issue, or there is a substantial, the very demand raised is absurd to the hit, then one can really do that. But one should be very careful. Any authority, I mean, same in the same matter, whether the both CGST, SGST, in my opinion, it is unlikely. So, but today with this digital tax, this is the online everything, and everything is going on. I mean, you know, you never know. One can always be prepared for the nasty surprises. Next. While presenting the charges, observe same para, or it is appropriate to first put all observation. It all depends upon. This is the drafting style of each and every person. Generally, when suppose you are the ground is on the merits. So on merits, what are the charges, allegations of the department can be summarized, and below that, how these allegations are not, the sustainable can be explained. So generally 1 or 2 paragraphs, some few sentences can be devoted. This again, few, when I say few, it can be detailed also. It all again depend upon. But it is always ideal to maintain the flow of the arguments, that what is the case of the department, and then what are our defense against the department on each ground. Now in limitation, they have charged you with the suppression of facts, evasion of case. So when the SSC is fighting against on the time bar issue, then what are the grounds on which the suppression charges has been delivered against the SSC in the SOCOS notice, and how those evidence or charges are not really valid and sustainable, that has to be pointed out. Guidance on timing, as I said, judgment can be placed at any convenient time, but it should be, there is nothing like it should be with the reply, or it should be at the time of hearing. Ideally, between reply and hearing, when you go for the hearing, the judgment compilations should be there on the records, or you can carry with you the judgment compilation. also. Same thing with the appeal. So how to classify and prove that the suppression of fake not done? This again depends on the facts of the case. It is simply not possible to answer this question. Next. Can officer extend period of one line reply to notice if ever no? No. I mean, he can do the extension. What I'm saying is he cannot do, one should be very diligent enough and should not ask for the extension as a matter of fact. Ideally, before expiry of the 30 days, if the reply cannot be filed within 30 days, one should really put a letter that we acknowledge the receipt, we deny all the allegations, we are seeking legal counsel, or we intend to file the defense reply, which will be filed in due course of time. If the matter is serious, complex, and huge stakes are involved, one can say that in view of the complexity of the matter and the huge stakes involved, we intend to take the legal assistance, legal counsel for the purpose of filing the defense reply, and the same will be filed in due course of time. And we claim personal hearing before any decision is taken in the matter. At least in indirect text, the SOCOS notice, the hearing is not the substitute for reply, and the reply is not the substitute for the hearing. And normally in the second last or third last paragraph of the SOCOS notice, one would invariably find that if no cause is shown against this SOCOS notice within 30 days of the receipt thereof, or if the party does not appear for the hearing whenever fixed, then the matter will be decided on the basis of the records. So it is or file the reply within 30 days or or appear. And one beauty of the adjudication, luckily, is that one can file even the reply or written submissions even at the time of the hearing. So there is no influence, but one should not be one should not act in such a manner that on paper it seems that you are delaying the proceeding. Then you will be jeopardizing your case forever. Blockage of ITC without prior intimation is legal? No. A SOCOS notice, in my opinion, is must. It is illegal and without authority of law. Issue based on gross recipient form, yes, there are spares of thousands of SOCOS notice, whether it is a valid SOCOS notice or not, but merely because it is mechanically issued on the basis of 26 AS or ITR will not render it invalid per se. One can take that ground, detail, there are judgments available on this, one can take that ground, this has been issued merely on the ITR without any application of mind and without any proper investigation of the facts, and therefore it is null and void. However, without prejudice to that, one should always actually give the submissions on merits also, if necessary, on time bar also. Whether state GST officer Indore can issue? No. In this particular case, the jurisdictional, the Indore-based officer who is not a jurisdictional officer cannot issue the SOCOS notice. Next. Multiple SOCOS notice after closure of proceeding. If the proceedings are closed in terms of section 73.10, 73.5, 74.5, we have gone into that before issue of the SOCOS notice, after issue of the SOCOS notice within 30 days of the adjudication order. If this route is followed and the proper liability is discharged, which is accepted, it cannot be reopened by the department at all. Even before issue of the SOCOS notice, if the unit has paid, SSE has paid on his own ascertainment, the tax and the interest properly, about which there is no dispute, the SOCOS notice cannot be issued at all. One can see the Karnataka High Court in Edeke Flexicon in this case, and there are a host of other judgments. They are there in my compilation, my presentation also. At what time when do we retract? Because statement is never given initially. This is a highly, contentious issue, but one can definitely retract the statement even at the time of SOCOS notice, and it goes without saying that this retraction will be treated as an afterthought by the departmental authority, even at times by the tribunal also. But one can put forward the plea that since the SOCOS statement copy has never been given to them, and it was for the first time they received the copy of the statement along with the SOCOS notice only, and therefore at this stage only the retraction could be made. This is the point which has to be argued, but it can be taken. Notice for purchase from non-existing dealer department. The blocking of the credit ledger merely on the basis of the charge that there is a fake purchase from the existing some supplier is definitely illegal. If this order is already passed, there is no other alternative but to go in appeal. If it is at the show cause notice stage, then one has to contest the show cause notice. And option to approach the High Court can be definitely considered, but very, very carefully. In such type of cases, one should be very careful in approaching the High Court in the initial stage. Draft copy of the reply, I have already dealt with this particular request. Next. And in case of fake invoice, buyer have so called, if we reverse the credit, interest and penalty can be waived. If the buyer has already paid it, the credit with interest and penalty, and interest can never be waived. The penalty depends upon if at the stage of show cause notice, if it is a 74 case which is made out in show cause notice, then the 15% penalty will be leviable. If credit in ledger is available, then interest can be waived. If ITC, you see the availability of the ITC, if it itself is attributable to the fake invoices, then the question arises whether this credit was ever admissible to the buyer or not. If it was never admissible, then its lying, that balance lying in the electronic credit ledger will be can be of no consequence also. This again will require the very careful examination of the facts. There cannot be a standard yardstick on this. Next. Law does not prescribe the time limit for reply to SOCIS. Is it at the discretion of the officer? I've already dealt with this particular aspect. What is the scope of 7311 and its implication? This very interesting and very important question has been raised by Mr. Narayan, an advocate based in Pune and very old colleague of mine. Thank you, Mr. Narayan, for raising this question. Section 7311 speaks about that in two cases, the benefit of closure of proceeding will not be available. We have seen into this, but just to refresh this aspect, one, wherever there is a self-assessed tax which has already been declared under GSTR 1. And second, when the tax has been collected but not deposited with the department. In that case, party cannot opt for the closure of proceeding at any stage under the section 73. Now, what are the implications in the nature and scope of this? If you see, I look at it from this angle. Section 73 provides the first option of closing the case and avoid the show cause notice if the party pays on his own ascertainment or as pointed out by the department. Now, what is meant by own ascertainment? Here, the own ascertainment can only be of that tax which has not been actually crystallized by him at any point of time. The unit is making the clearances, declaring it under GSTR 1. Tax liability has been crystallized in that GSTR 1 and which is payable on 20th through the GSTR 3B. If for any reason, any clearances have escaped the duty tax payment or there is a less payment, then it is really never getting reflected in GSTR 1. It is only the escaped tax. I'm not talking about concealment. I'm taking a normal case. It is only the tax which has not been crystallized through the filing of the, which is not part of the GSTR 1, can only be ascertained by the SSE either on his own or through the internal audit or at the time of filing 9 and 9C or for in whatever manner. And it is that can also for the closure of proceeding benefit would lie. But when I am already as a taxpayer declaring my clearances supplies under GSTR 1, that is a crystallized liability. And there I cannot say that I am on my own ascertainment making the payment because I already ascertained that liability. Then obviously section 73(3) will not come into the play. And this appears to be the logic of the legislature that why they do not want to extend the benefit and thereby giving, that uncalled for relief to the taxpayer who does not pay the tax which he has already declared as payable in the GSTR 1 through his outward supplies and not paying the tax and then say that, okay, now I will actually deal with the penalty and interest only. I will close the proceeding after making the payment on my own because he is already required to make that payment. And that is why 7311 is required to be read with 7512 and also with the new explanation. The only question which will arise is whether 7512 and explanation thereto will be, is it in contradistinction with section 59, which requires, the return to be filed that about under section 39. So whether any rectification of any error or mistake in GSTR1, which is not permitted, whether that can be an issue while interpreting section 7512 and explanation thereto. We may have to wait for this. This is a point to be taken up at in an appropriate stage. In other words, simply setter declaring the self-assessed tax through the GSTR1 mean that it will forever bind the taxpayer. Then what remedies are available? This is something we have to see separately. It is another legal issue, but the legislature thinking is very clear that on ascertainment benefit, why it is not explicable, because it is only in respect of the tax which has not been crystallized even at the taxpayer stage initially. And he is later on finding out that something has not been paid correctly. Similarly, if somebody has already pocketed the tax from the buyers and not deposited with the government, the legislature is not in a mood to give the benefit of the closure of proceedings there too. Next. Now we come to audit. If the audit finding is accepted by the SEC, will it be covered under section? Acceptance of the audit finding has nothing to do with whether it is a fraud case or whether it is a non-fraud case. It will all depend upon what is the nature of the objection, the basis of the objection or the demand raised by the audit in their audit memo, for what period they are actually alleging the demand as payable or leviable, whether that demand period is beyond normal period of limitation, it extends to 5 years or not, whether audit has pointed out any grounds or evidence whereby the extended period of limitation in their audit memo they are justifying. These are all the varied factors which have to be taken into account before classifying or categorizing a case under 73 or 74. Merely because I am accepting the audit finding and making the payment, it may be a ground to allege, to contest the charges of evasion. But again, it will depend upon the facts of the case. Can allegation of suppression be made merely because the fact of non-payment of this? Again, I said that this is a case where it will depend upon the facts of each case. A simpliciter demand raised on the basis of audit objection without any independent investigation by the proper officer who has issued the show cause notice, and the facts of the case and the charges narrated in the show cause notice show that the actual investigation, if properly and judiciously undertaken, could have avoided the issue of the show cause notice, but the proper officer has only gone ahead mechanically on the basis of audit objection, that can be a valid ground to challenge the validity. How can we deal with the penalty of 15% during GST audit? GST audit have no right to impose any penalty. They may say under each objection, in view of the above, the amount of so-and-so is recoverable, liable to be paid by you. So kindly make this payment of tax along with interest and 15% penalty and inform the payment particulars. A standard type of sentence by under the audit memo or even by the departmental communication. It does not mean that audit is levying the penalty. A penalty can be levied only through the proper adjudication order. That can be levied only by the adjudicating authority. An adjudicating authority comes into picture only when there is a show cause notice, which has been replied to and after considering the submissions of the party. So there is a misnomer here that audit is actually levying the penalty of 15%. It is we who are paying the 15% penalty without really going through the finer aspects of the law. And therefore, there is no question of this is again, when we have started on the wrong note, we will continue on the wrong note only. So we have to be very careful about such things. Next. Audit memo issued under 70, not under 73, and statement of demand. Can we have the benefit of 73.5? First of all, both have no relationship with each other at all. A statement of demand is issued if it is a statement of demand under DRC 01A, then it is a different matter altogether. We have covered that pre-notice consultation. If it is a statement of demand, otherwise is only a subsequent show cause notice based on the ground on which the earlier show cause notice has been issued. The question here is whether it is a normal show cause notice under 73.1 or normal extended period SOCOS notice under 74(1), followed by another statement of demand. Statement 74 does not provide for the statement of demand. 73 when follows. In all the cases, the benefit of closure of proceeding and the waiver of full penalty or at least the reduction in penalty can be availed. The law is very clear on this. The process goes like audit authority compels to pay tax. I've again repeatedly cleared any demand raised by audit without SOCOS notice is illegal and without authority of law. Then next, and second question is, what is the right manner to deal with it? You have to raise your objections in the writing at the audit stage only. Next. To be paid otherwise. I think this question has already been taken up. I may have to fine tune this slightly because there are many repetitions, unfortunately. Can you guide me the rate of interest applicable? Yeah, previous. ITC reversal at the time of GST departmental audit. If there is a ITC reversal, the demand relates to ITC, then normally the interest rate will be 24% in the section 50 subsection 3. Having said that, I will just take a pause here and explain this. Section 50 subsection 3, in my opinion, comes into play only when there is a excess or undue ITC availed or utilized undue on account of the mismatch. That is under section 42 or 43. Unless there is a mismatch which has resulted into the excess or undue availment of the ITC, if the ITC has been availed, say on the wrong interpretation of law, for instance, under section 17(5), there are exclusions. However, bona fide, I'm not going into the mala fide or willful. Bona fide, the person has actually misinterpreted the law. And he has taken the credit, say, on club and membership of the director, saying that it is meant for the business activity, it is necessary. Or the food and beverage is meant for the staff. In all these cases, if the credit is taken, or motor vehicle related expenses which otherwise not permissible only in specific cases. These are all interpretational issues. And in that case, interest liability does not arise, in my opinion, as the things stand today, as the section 50 subsection 3 stand today. Highly debatable contentious issue, but I'm of this view right from the day one when the GST law was introduced. And this is a matter which can be tested in the court of law, ultimately has to be tested. They will have to amend this law. It is so badly and hopelessly drafted. And going further also, forget about the excess of mismatch. I would go to the extent of saying that today, as the law exists and all the statutory provision relevant are harmoniously interpreted and read, in my opinion, interest liability under 18% under section 51 and 24% for ITC under section 53 itself does not arise. So even if I have short paid the tax, the interest at 18% under section 50 subsection 1 is also not payable. This is the contention which is very much plausible to be taken. It is a legal interpretation. And so this is something which one has to look into. Any time limit for issuance of SOCOS notice based on FAR, all the SOCOS notices for any reason which are to be issued, whatever may be the basis or the cause of action for the department to issue SOCOS notice, will be governed by section 73 or section 74 as the case may be, depending upon the facts of the case. Next. No. Audit memo, not a SOCOS notice. Next. Detention search. Section 73 can be invoked within 33 months of the filing of due date of filing. For the detention of goods in April 21, can section 73 be? It is not warranted unless the goods are found to be supplied without cover of tax invoice. In the excise jargon, we would call it a clandestine removal of goods. In that case, if the goods are found to be removed without tax invoice or without showing the payment of tax, their tax invoice, they are clandestinely removed. They can be detained and seized, and on demand, tax can be demanded on that. Then that demand can come only under section 73. Next. Vehicle detention case are not issued by the jurisdictional officer. Then in that case, if it is not issued, then one has to, whether MOB without any preamble is an appellable order. Yes, all the order passed in relation to the detention of the vehicle and the goods on the during transit are appealable under section 107. You may kindly also digest, there are mammoth amendments made in relation to detention provisions, as you know, by Finance Act 2021, under 107, under 129, 130, all these provisions have been amended, ostensibly for the reason to make the things easier for the taxpayer. It is going to create a nightmarish situation for the taxpayers when they are notified. But it itself recognizes the right to file an appeal before the first appellate authority against the detention order. Then appeal shall be filed with the jurisdictional officer. This is another practical issue. I know this issue is lying pending, dormant. For some reason, nothing is being done on this for last 2 years. Suppose a registered person in Maharashtra has moved the goods to another registered person in Gujarat, and the goods are intercepted in Gujarat border, detained. The officer, the taxpayer is forced to make the payment. He makes the payment of tax, though he is cleared the goods under tax invoice. But now he wants to challenge this levy of another tax payment by the Gujarat officer on tax, interest, penalty, tax and penalty. Order has been passed by Gujarat officer where the Maharashtra SSE has no registration and the Maharashtra officer has not passed the order. This is the classic situation. What is being done by us and what is being should be done is, even when the tax is paid in Gujarat, the challan will obviously show the registration number of the Maharashtra only. Without that, the one does not take the new registration in Gujarat for making the payment. Since it is under the Maharashtra registration, the appeal should be filed with the Maharashtra registration number only, with the Maharashtra authority only. And if to be on a safer side, the copy of that appeal should also be placed on the records of the Gujarat officer authority also. And this is how it should be done till this burning issue is resolved by the board and in consultation with GSTN. But it should be first filed with the jurisdictional officer. Such appeals have been filed by us, and we see no difficulty on this. Appeal in GSTN shall be filed online against summary. In e-way such a summary order is absent. That's why I say, appeal, first of all, appeal is never filed against the summary order. The summary of the order is merely a prior intimation to you. The entire order, one should insist upon uploading, and based on that, or physical copy also should be available, and based on that, the order appeal should be filed. There is a recently Gujarat High Court judgment, which also says if the order is not uploaded on the the site, then the time limit will not start running at all. It is not an order. So summary of the order is not an appealable order. You should normally state government officers are extremely lethargic and reluctant to upload the full order. One should put a request in writing only on this. Next. I have covered this aspect. Next, 4 number question. Appeal remedies for the seizure with respect to e-way bill. Appeal remedies is as provided under section 107 as existing today. The amendment to section 107 about the 25% is a pre-deposit of the penalty, which itself is a absurd amendment and a non-operational amendment, totally which cannot be implemented at all in view of the other amendments. It's a different story altogether. So that itself says that the 107 very much comes into play in case of the orders which are passed in relation to the detention and e-way bills. They don't allow CA to be put. You have a consolation, you have a company here. They do not allow only the CA, they do not allow even the advocates. So you really did not feel bad about this. There are no provisions whereby, unlike the search and seizure under Income Tax Act, when normally the professional chartered accountant, normally officially or otherwise, is managed, always is able to remain present, and the client would also love him to be present there. In a SOCOS notice under indirect tax during search and seizure, this may not be possible every time. There are few decisions on this which are conflicting in nature. On my presentation, I have already dealt with this aspect in detail. Next. What would be the time limit of 73 if the SSE has not filed the annual return? The very fact that it is the due date for furnishing the return under section 44 that itself is sufficient. Whether SSC has filed the return or not, it does not become relevant at all. It is the due date for furnishing the return. In another case, SSC files the return on 31st December 2021. One can definitely, it is for which year? I take it, it may be for the year 1890. Without the financial year, it will be difficult to answer this, but I'm sure that the participant who has raised this query will be in a position to now work out backward, applying the law, that how to work out the time limit based on this. Whether the Supreme Court suo motu extension order will automatically extend the limitation period? Yes. Friends, here I will just make one mention. I'm extremely careful about the grammar